British concert pianist Murray McLachlan plays recitals and concerts all around the world. He's recorded over 40 discs and he's head of keyboard at Cheetham School of Music and Professor of Piano at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester. So I'm delighted he's taken the time from a very busy schedule to join me here for a classical conversation at Chapels of Bond Street in London. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Melanie.
Lovely to be talking to you here today, really is.
Lovely to see you again, because we met for the first time earlier in the year.
I want to start by talking all about your musical education. How old were you when you started to play? What was the catalyst? Did you come from a musical family?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, I started when I was 2, really, because I was jumping up and down on the bed in time to the Gondoliers, old sort of vinyl records, and then I started to break them. Break the record player by trying to put them on. I think initially my parents thought I was going to be a sort of Olympic gymnast, but then they realised perhaps I was musical. There's always a piano in the house,
right.
And my mother was an amateur pianist, and she loved it. She had to stop because, basically her generation, there wasn't the money, after a certain age, and so she kept on doing it on her own. She used to love enlivening pieces by adding double octaves in the bass, and that's something that has sort of persevered in my likings. I mean, I love Bach, Guzzoni, and Brahms and thick textures, but I mean, when she would sort of play simple little arrangements, so my earliest memories is of me sitting watching my mother doing these very theatrical, quasi-camp double octaves, boom, and that made a big impact, at least for a young age.
So which teacher then do you think was kind of crucial on your development as a pianist?
I've learned something from all the teachers I've had. I mean, obviously in Aberdeen I had a wonderful lady early on who wasn't really a piano teacher. She charged 60p a lesson, Mary Alexander, and she was a real campaigner for pensioners' rights. And I used to kind of do my own thing and practice 10, all the Mozart sonatas and excerpts of the Liszt E-flat concerto, and then I would go along and do my grade 3 pieces for her. She didn't know anything about it at all, and it was sort of like 10 minutes for the lesson, but I loved her, and she was really, and she remained a friend. We used to have wonderful giggles together about all kinds of things, so she was fabulous. When I went to Cheetham's, I was told I wasn't good enough to be a pianist, and the director of music at the time, Michael Brewer, he said, no, we've got far too many good pianists. Take up the guitar as the first study, and the piano would be too much of a conflict, so be a clarinetist. Anyway, so towards the end of the first term, as a 14-year-old, I was getting a bit fed up just playing the guitar all the time, and I thought I'll just play the piano for a laugh, and started bashing out Pour le Piano and Beethoven Opus 10 No. 3 and Mendelssohn Rondo Capriccioso. And into the room came a practice supervisor called David Hartigan, and he said, this is really good, don't stop, carry on, like something out of a Hollywood film. And he said, this is disgraceful, you should be doing the piano. And he was a second study, he maybe had second study students at that stage, but he said, you must have lessons with me. And I was very grateful. I mean, poor David died at the age of 50 in 1997, but if it hadn't been for him wandering in and creating a fuss and getting into trouble, by the way, from the director of music and others in the school, I would have been a miserable guitar player today. So, and he was fabulous, and he did, I don't know how he did it. I mean, he took somebody like me, who was all over the place, and within a year and a half I was playing the Rachmaninoff Paganini variations with a youth orchestra with Evelyn Glennie playing the timpani. It's her first ever concert as a percussionist, conducted by Timothy Rainish, and doing Petrushka 2 years later. So he was an amazing person, actually, and I absolutely loved him. And so he was fabulous and very much missed. And after that, Peter Caton was amazing. to go to somebody who played at the proms and recorded for a decade and have all his enthusiasm. Norma Fisher I've learned a lot from. I mean, perhaps the most important musical influence is Ronald Stevenson. He never charged a penny for a lesson, and I had stays with him. I would go overnight for sleepovers. I'd just lap up all this information about Busoni, Godowsky, Granger, Rubinstein, Corto, his own music, his own enthusiasms. He was and is and remains incredible and a real vibrant genius. So I would say probably he's been a huge, most big influence on me.
So how did you develop your technique then? Did you enjoy practicing lots of churnis and panels, or did you just learn the technique within each work, do you think?
There wasn't any time. I mean, when I went to David for lessons, after the row at Chet's in the first term, he was faced with somebody who just turned 50, all over the place. There's no time to do all that. So it had to be a case of, I don't know how he did it actually. I mean, he gave me Suggestion Diabolique and Prokofiev, and all these other pupils he tended to give classical music to. He suddenly said to me, you must do Busoni, you must do Petrushka, you must do César Franck. So, I'm very grateful. What an amazing man. I mean, so it was all over the place, learning these ridiculous pieces with terrible problems, and I've gradually caught up. Peter Caton gave amazing exercises to me. His finger independence told me about arm weight, got me into Alfred Corto exercises. Norma Fisher carried on with that. Ronald Stevenson made his own exercises that he wrote and gave me Busoni's Klavierübung to do. I've explored Berenger with my own students. Obviously, you have to learn all the etudes. Czerny's wonderful. I wish I'd done it in retrospect, but I should have done it when I was younger if I'd been a proper pianist at that age. But anyway, it's bizarre.
Yeah, well, technique's always such an interesting topic.
It is.
I wanted to ask you as well, you've sat on lots of juries, international competitions. Do you still think that they can establish a pianist career if they win a big competition? Do you think it's important still? Or are they obsolete now?
I think the old kind of feeling of, an unknown pianist comes along, wins a competition, and suddenly they're jetting off on, club class to New York and champagne lifestyles and Rolls Royces opening and chauffeurs, and I think that's all finished because there's been so many of them and life's changed. It's not enough. Certainly they can help open doors and in the short term or perhaps in the moderate term, keep you going. Our first competition at Cheetham's that I run, the Manchester International Concerto Competition that we founded in 2007, the very first one had this 12-year-old boy playing the Chopin F minor from Canada called Jan Leszczyński, and he was incredible. Howard Shelley was on the jury. He didn't win, but Howard loved his playing. We all did. We were all amazed. And Howard invited him to Poland, and basically that started his career off. And he's doing the Schumann at the proms this year. He's recording for Deutsche Grammophon. And it was a kind of Howard that introduced him to the festival in Poland that got him the record contract at IMG. So I like to think, in that way, our first competition has helped, but it has to be a kind of gradual process or part of the ongoing development. I don't think there's going to be any kind of fairy godmother, Cinderella, rags to riches scenario nowadays, whereas there might have been in the past.
Yes. Which repertoire are you drawn to? What do you really enjoy playing?
Well, I mentioned my mother and these big booby basses. That's never really left me. I love making a huge sound of the piano. I love turning it into an orchestra. I've always adored Beethoven and Bach. I love to bits. The usual kind of suspects, but it's interesting. Russian music has really attracted me always. I was very lucky in that as a student studying with Peter was recording for Olympia, and he didn't want to record Miaskowski's 9 sonatas. He was doing Schubert and Chopin, but he said, well, I have got a very young pianist called Murray McLachlan. He would be maybe a suitable candidate, and so they came along and heard me play the RPO, the Schumann, and asked me to record. And that one record of Miaskowski in 1988 led to another 19 CDs on Olympia. And it was because one record led to another. Then it was Prokofiev, then it was Kabalevsky, Shchedrin, Khachaturian, Cheretin, Weinberg. One followed from the other. So I love all that. I played all the Brahms works. I'm playing the 32 Beethoven sonatas at the moment, for the 4th or the 5th time in Lanzarote. So It's a varied repertoire. I adore Chopin. You know, Debussy, I love it. You know, what can one say? You know, it's like kind of having a set of keys in your pocket, and you might maybe need about a dozen of them, and they'll open up most of the universe. And you know, one thing leads to another. It's like being an actor, having different roles, different accents, different mannerisms, having a different technique for each composer is fascinating.
You've given lots of premieres. That's very exciting.
Oh yeah,
Ronald
yes.
Stevenson, Charles Camilleri, lots of different premieres.
Even Beethoven. Yeah.
Well, I was about to say, the Beethoven one really struck me. Do tell us about
Well, that was simply because Barry Cooper was in Manchester. He used to be in Aberdeen when I was really young. And my first ever Beethoven sonata, Barry Cooper was the professor at Aberdeen University, and he discovered some new bagatelles and the original version of Für Elise. I mean, I think Für Elise, you know, the revised version. So I mean, that was hilarious. But that had quite a fuss, and it was on the PM program on Radio 4, and it was even on the television. We're talking about 1989, I think. You know, very early on in my career. But British music, I've always been very fond of. Not just because of the lessons of Ronald, but other composers like John McLeod that I've been friendly with, or John Williamson in Wales. I've done 3 CDs of his music. So again, one thing tends to lead to another, and because obviously this is where I live, that composers will come up to you, they have done from university, and ask you to play their music, and that's exciting. You know, Philip Radcliffe at Cambridge University used to say to me, "Well, I don't know what you've written is right. We can't ring Beethoven up and ask him, but you can ring up Ronald Stevenson or John McLeod, and to have that kind of direct impact is wonderful. They don't always say what you think they'll say, and they're much more willing to change notes than you might think they would be as well."
You've recorded over 40 discs. It's quite an incredible amount. What's been kind of your favourite? I won't say your favourite, but which one do you feel that it shows you're playing off to the best? Do you think?
Oh, I've got no idea. I love doing it all. The one that you're doing at the moment.
Is that, yes.
I mean, I was very, very touched to do Miaskowski sonatas, because that was the very first one, and Radio 3 were extremely kind of that they kept on playing excerpts from them when Simon Rattle's Creation finished a bit early because he took it so fast. They put on a 20-minute Miaskowski sonata, things like that. So I mean, that had a big impact at the time, and I loved the music, and nobody else seemed to play it.
No.
Although Glenn Gould and Richter were admirers of the music. What can I say? Prokofiev sonatas I've always adored. I'm just recording them again now for live performances, just for film, to see if I can do it as a kind of personal challenge. You know, all these years later, having done them in 1989 and 1990. Ronald's Passacaglia that goes on for 85 minutes. I'm very close to it, and that's like an encyclopedic one. It's like a sort of equivalent to Beethoven's Diabelli or the Bach Goldberg for modern times. So, what can I say? You know, I think we've always performers got to feel that what we're doing at any one time is the most important thing that we're doing.
You teach at the Cheetham School, you teach at the Royal Northern. What is it that attracts you about teaching? What do you really,
what do I love about
it?
teaching?
Yeah.
Sharing with other people, loving other people through music, becoming much, much happier and inspired and creative because of the intensity of working on music with somebody else that makes me much more interesting, makes the student much more interesting, gets rid of our egos and takes us into a different dimension.
And you've taught 3 of your children from scratch to very advanced from what you were saying. Now that's quite a challenge.
I'm in the middle of, I was teaching the 4th one as grade 1 theory this morning.
Oh really?
So, well, I mean, the thing is that because I'm so manic in my life,
yes.
so busy, if I didn't teach them, I wouldn't have a relationship with them properly. And it was either a case of do or die. So I have, you know, taught minuet in G and been spat in the face. But having said that, you know, Callum is now playing Shostakovich's 2nd Concerto, and he's got a decent teacher at Dean at Parakina. I always pass them on after they've done grade 8, and they get sorted out by somebody else, like John Byrne at the Wells Cathedral School or Dina. So, you know, I mean, it was a way to get to know them. And what better way to get to know your kids than to work with intensity in something that's as important as music and something that you love as much, you know, rather than trying to do it half-heartedly with football or something like that.
You're the founder and artistic director of the Cheetham Summer Pianist School and Festival, and I believe it's the largest one in Europe. How did it come about, and how has it kind of changed and developed over the years?
How did it come about? On the back of an envelope in Christmas 2000. Really, you know, I sort of mentioned to my wife Catherine, who's also a pianist, I think we should have a summer school because, I mean, David, actually my old teacher, and Alicia Widykiewicz, a Polish pianist who taught chess, had talked vaguely about doing it. And, you know, I mean, it's an ideal venue to have a summer school. It's got all these pianos, you know, 120 of them, and all these rooms and halls, and it's safe. It's in the middle of Manchester, and it's empty for weeks in the summer. So it makes a lot of sense. So it started off, and it was basically me handwriting letters and envelopes, and I learned how to type on a computer because of starting this thing. I couldn't even type before that. So it was basically just that. I didn't know what would happen. The first year, Catherine was actually expecting our first daughter, Rose, and on the registration day she got dreadful sickness, as you can when you're pregnant, and she just said, I have to go, and really left me and 92 participants and a faculty of 20 to cope. Fortunately, lots of wonderful colleagues like Marta Karbonitska came to the rescue, but it's a miracle we survived the first year. Now it's much more slick and professional. We've got lots of helpers. Catherine is a full-time administrator, whereas like 3 or 4 jobs in itself.
Yeah.
And we keep going. We've already got 200 people coming in each week of this course, and we've got this concerto competition as well attached to it, and they're coming from South America, China, Australia, North America, all over Europe, all over the United Kingdom, and every age from 8 to people in their 80s. A huge sort of range. It's crazy, but it's great fun.
And you edit the Piano Professional magazine, which is one of Ector's magazines, which is the European Piano Teachers Association, which you're chairman. You've written loads of articles. How does this complement your playing, do you think? Do you think it kind of helps you as a player at all?
Well, I mean, I did music at university at Cambridge, so I was always writing, but the director of Olympia CDs, Francis Wilson, is no longer with us. Another great man in my life, a wonderful influence. He said, you know, you should write your own program notes because it will help crystallize your thoughts on Miaskowski. And I started, and it's such fun. I adore writing, you know. You know, I often say I would love to be a novelist rather than a musician, but it's the same. Instead of using notes and sounds, you're using words to reach something beyond yourself. And it's fascinating. It's a great passion. I love writing. And it's sort of developed an international piano that I write for. I started in 2001, and they've asked me 6 times a year to write about techniques. So it's kind of built up, you know, every 2 months writing about a different aspect of technique. But it's good fun. It's enjoyable.
Yeah. What exciting plans have you got coming up?
Well, I'm going to play another 28 Beethoven sonatas and Lanzarote, and I'm going abroad to judge quite a few competitions, and I don't know if I'll be able to fit them all in. I'm supposed to go to Rome, and I'm supposed to go to Warsaw later this year, and then next year Singapore for a new competition as well. It keeps on going. There's concerts around the country. There seems to be more abroad these days, which is, you know, I don't know why. I mean, it used to be a lot in Scotland, not so much now. So I am going up there to Aberdeen to do 2 Tchaikovsky #1s in a few months. So it keeps going. It's funny as well how it works in cycles. How you never go somewhere and then suddenly you go there a lot. So lots of plans, lots to look forward to.
What does playing the piano mean to you?
Playing the piano means getting out of yourself, getting away from pettiness, mundanities, and reaching something higher. And, you know, for that reason, I see it on the same level as a dancer would see, you know, dancing, or a sculptor working with stone, or somebody, a painter with oils or watercolors. Getting away, you know, reaching something better.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much.